On day 13, we'll be looking around this part of Washington, D.C. First, we'll start off in the News Museum, then we'll move to the Navy Memorial, then we'll move down to the National Archives building, up to the International Spy Museum, and then over to the Smithsonian American Art Museum and Portrait Gallery. Let's get started. The museum building covers this area and is right next door to the Canadian Embassy. It changes one of its displays regularly. Out in front, they have the front pages from newspapers around the world. This is one from Mississippi. Although it's older than this, it opened at its current location in 2008. And in the atrium, they have a big screen that shows current events and a news helicopter. It has 7 floors and 14 galleries, and we'll be starting at the top and working our way down. At the top we can see various big stories and pull out and read the headlines from year after year, starting back in the 1400s. There are 15 different movie theaters where you can watch different events as they unfolded. In the 9/11 Memorial, you can read headlines from around the world about the attack. Here we can also find the communications tower from the top of the World Trade Center that was crumpled by the attack. And over there is a part of the Pentagon. Another display remembers those who have died in the course of their work as news people. This map shows freedom of the press. Red is no freedom, yellow is some, and green is total freedom. This truck was used to keep correspondents alive in Yugoslavia. And this car didn't keep people alive as they were killed in it, reporting the news. Now let's look at some Pulitzer Prize winning photography. On the bottom floor is one of the largest pieces of the Berlin Wall. And behind it you can see one of the guard towers that would have been on that wall. On the top floor we can step out and look down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol building. And now we step outside and look down at the Capitol one more time before we head over to the Navy Memorial and look there. In this aerial view, you can see the large map of the world. It's called the Granite Sea. And as we look around, knowing it's a Navy memorial, there's going to be water everywhere. Five ship masts are set up around the memorial. And ringing the memorial are 26 scenes from naval history to remind us of all that the Navy does. And now we pause to look at the lone sailor standing on the Granite Sea as we head across the street to the Archives building. The National Archives hold the record of the United States. It was opened in 1934 on its present location. The pediment on the 16th Avenue side is called the Recorder of Archives. The pediment on the Pennsylvania Avenue side is entitled Destiny. On the Constitutional Avenue side, we find guardianship and also heritage statues. And then on the Pennsylvania Avenue side, we've seen past and the future statues, and guarding the entrances of the guardians of the portal. There's much inside this building of archives to look up and for research, but the main thing to look at is in the blue. The rotunda of the Charters of Freedom are located here. Inside we find the basic documents of our freedom, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Let's look at each of these in this order. First, the Declaration of Independence. Next we come to the Constitution. Next we come to the Bill of Rights, and around them are various documents talking about how they were created. Above the documents on the left side we find the Declaration of Independence by Faulkner. And then on the right side we see the Constitution by Faulkner also. As you leave, look to the right and you'll see one of the 4 existing original manuscripts of the Magna Carta. And then it's time to leave and head up to the International Spy Museum. The International Spy Museum occupies 2 floors of this section of the building. In Washington, D.C., there are more spies than any other place in the world, so obviously you have to have a museum for them to come to. It was opened in July 2002. This is Aston Martin from Goldfinger in the lobby. On the second floor, you'll find the Covers and Legends, the School for Spies, the Secret History of History, and the Spies Among Us. Let's just look at some of the exhibits. On the first floor is basically James Bond exhibit, one of the most famous spies. Here we'll find all sorts of memorabilia from the movies, the posters, and about Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond stories. Let's just look around some. And now, as James Bond is threatened again with murder, we leave the International Spy Museum and head to the old Patent Office. It has two museums in it, the Smithsonian American Art Museum and the National Portrait Gallery. We're going to be looking at these for a while now. The American Art Museum is American artists. It contains 7,000 American artists and 41,000 works. And so the Luce Foundation moved in to create an atrium where many of these artworks can be displayed, since there's not enough space in the galleries themselves. Upstairs we find the Great Hall, where they displayed newly patented inventions when it was the Patent Office. Also up here is where Abraham Lincoln had his second inaugural ball. Also in the top floors we find the Lunder Conservation Center, where they conserve various artwork. Now let's look at the modern art section. After modern art, we come to the regular art collection. Remember, all of these are by American artists. We'll now move to the portrait gallery and look at the American Origins section, which is where those who appeared in our nation have their portrait. The American Portrait Gallery has often been called America's family album of all the people who are part of our nation and have made us who we are. The National Portraiture Museum has over 20,000 works and more being added daily. Now we come to the Hall of Presidents and to get a look at those who have led our nation. The 3 stories of the building encircle an atrium where you can sit and rest in between looking. And now it's time to call day 13 to an end.